That would be tough to dance to. Hey, David, are you there?
I am, Phil.
Do you mind if we do one ringy-dingy just for old time's sake?
Sure.
One ringy-dingy, two ringy-dingies.
I thought I said I was okay with one ringy-dingy. You just give me two.
Are we going to have one of those nights? Okay, why don't you just go ahead and do the... I'm kidding. Why don't you go ahead and do the smart stuff, and I'll sit here and sing Kumbaya.
Well, I wanted to give a shout out to the Discord chat room. I've been a little remiss in not checking out what's going on there, and it's pretty active. So, just as a plug for the people in there, and there's some very nice chats going on. So a few other things. I've been puzzling over a prospective business model for Abel Danger going forward, because I think we got to the point where we can meaningfully approach or be approached by an injured community seeking redress for wrongful deaths associated with the negligent, reckless, willful, fraudulent, or concealed use of patented devices. So the last two posts, today's was concerning the tuner that triggered a detonator that triggered a bomb on Air India 182, and the Conair, and this is extraordinary thing, the prisoner tracking system invented by a guy called Joseph Lemelson. And this guy was an out-and-out fraud, but he has 605 patents credited to him. And I have one patent, as you know, the deductive computing machine credited to me. It lapsed because I couldn't afford to pay for the fees in various countries where I needed to protect it. And the problem with a lapsed patent is it reverts, it becomes, I think, what they call a stranded patent. So any corrupt patent lawyer can basically flog it to any of his major clients and make a buck or two at my expense, so to speak. Now, this guy, Joseph Lemelson, invented the prisoner tracking system and evaluation using artificial intelligence techniques. And I thought that reminded me of a project for which your sister got, or an associated project, got a Gore Hammer Award. Do you remember when and where and in what context she got the Gore Hammer Award? Over to you.
Yes, I remember it like it was yesterday. It was October 22nd of 1996 in the Great Hall of Shame, where all the Department of Justice, three-legged billy goats, lesbians, hybristophiliac lesbians, gay guys, pedophiles, transgender, gender non-identifiable, and those people with no gender whatsoever, not to be confused with the 1966 less than known seller by the association called No Fair at All. Now, I could sing No Fair at All, but I think I'll wait till the end of the show to keep everybody in rapt attention to your cheesy drivel. So the answer is yes, it was October 22nd, 1996. Hillary was in the shadows, but Jamie Gorelick and Drulin Janet Reno, Drulin Janet and Sloppy Hillary and stern-faced Jamie Gorelick and my sister were lied to by Mr. Hot Air Al Gore, and standing in the hall next to Janet Reno, who was 6'4", was a little snowflake whose name is Christopher someone. Do you remember Christopher's last name?
Oh, you mean the guy at DOJ Pride?
Yeah, the little short guy that was gay.
No, it escapes me.
Yeah, it wasn't Christopher Robin. That guy was in the house at Pooh Corner. But I'll go find Christopher's last name, and it's shameful. But I've got the other two guys, Robert Beekle and Charles, Hurley Johnson. So anyway, those are the tough ones. I mean, Robert Beekle and Hurley Johnson, how did I remember that? But I'll go find the little short guy's name. He's Christopher somebody. Over to you, David.
Right, so we've got that meeting celebrated the extraordinary idea that they had helped to reinvent government through various research arms under the in United States administration of Bill the Traitor Clinton. And I believe there were 3 projects that were identified for which the recipients got hold of a Gore Hammer Award, which I think is a hammer with a sort of a rosette or something attached to it, which presumably they could hang over their beds, since, as you say, or as you imply, there's a very heavy celebration of the deviant techniques by which the members of DOJ Pride amuse themselves. And I'm not being sexist or homophobic, I'm just saying deviant means on a Gaussian or bell-shaped curve, you're on the edges, because most people use, their organs for the purposes intended and others don't. But I'm not being cynical. So there were 3 projects awarded, right? One was called Sentry, one was called Jabs, and one was called JPATS. Now, JPATS is interesting because it has that nickname Con Air, and it occurred to me the other day when I saw the Lemelson invention for prisoner tracking. Wouldn't it be interesting if Mr. Lemelson and your benighted sister were working together to create a long-range murder for hire and sabotage operation using JPATs to carry Con Air SWAT teams? That could be flown perhaps from a jail to a crime scene with a script and the necessary technology for spotting, shooting, snuffing, spinning and spoiling, perhaps on the internet, but not necessarily on the internet. And then when they've done their dirty work, being flown back to jail with a nearly perfect alibi. Does that sound like a reasonable suggestion, Phil? Over to you.
Yeah, it's reasonable that they thought that might work, but they failed to be aware that Abel danger was lurking out there. By the way, Braveheart, thanks for trying to find Bob Beekle. I have an advantage in finding Bob Beekle, only because I live in a town where about 20% of the people in Plum City are Beekles. It's Bechel, and I think I just published the names of the people. I'm pretty sure I did. It's Christopher Hook. Does that remember Chris Hook?
Ah, yes. Yes. Isn't that what Bill Clinton's got? Is it a hook or is it a return valve?
No, it's the pressure valve is faulty on one side of his crank. And so he's got Peyronie's disease. And for those of you who are not familiar with the male appendage, they have 2 hydraulic shafts or vanes. And in order to get something you can push, you got to have both of them pretty well equally pressurized. And he suffers from Peyronie's. I just had an interesting thought. He suffers from Peyronie's, and that's Peyronie', Peyronie's syndrome or Peyronie's disease, where if he wants a certain item to point straight forward, due to the lackluster plumbing of his unit, instead of pointing straight forward so he can push it, it points to the left so you can't. David, you are familiar with ancient Roman cliche that you cannot push a rope?
Yes, do you remember the Latin word for rope?
Yes, it's letterishu de caru.
Incredible, Phil. Your memory bank serves you well.
Well, how did you remember it?
Well, I don't know what it is. I just thought you might, because you know such a lot.
I had my fingers crossed. I don't know anything. I just sit here to keep you entertained while you're educating America and the world.
Well, that's very kind of you, Phil. But you mentioned a pressure valve in respect of Bill Clinton's Peyronie disease.
Yeah.
And I think, quite honestly, there are very few online organizations that could segue from Bill Clinton's Peyronie disease to the sabotage of a plant producing methyl isocyanate in Bhopal in India, which was sabotage.
I was hoping you'd get around to 1985 when Michael LaVaughn Robinson, before he tried to pretend like he was a girl. Anyway, he went over there as an attorney with Union Carbide to try to prove it wasn't a genocide, which it was. And I'm a recent expert on genocides, David. Did you know that?
I thought you were probably an expert way back.
Expert what?
Way back. Expert way back.
Oh, I don't know what that means, but Denise will explain it to me.
No, it means you've been an expert on genocide for a long, long time, because, for example, we've covered the Clintons' role in the genocide in Rwanda, right?
Yes, and we've covered the Clintons' role in the genocide in Katrina in 2005 using the U-2, whose tail number is 80-1076. They used the same U-2 in Haiti. Once again, why are they dumb enough to use the same U-2 in two different genocides? There was a genocide in Ireland from 1845 to 1850. There was a genocide in the Ottoman Empire. And do you have any idea what all these genocides have in common, David?
Yeah, they're sponsored through the Fabians
I
in the United Kingdom.
You. Yeah, and the Fabians, I don't know where they started, but hasn't their base of operations for probably the last 150 to 200 years been in London?
London School of Economics.
Well, guess what LSE means? And I didn't say LSD. LSE means La Crosse, Wisconsin, where I live about 90 miles north of it. But LSE is also London School of Economics, as you just blurted out. What do you think the odds are that my congressman in Wisconsin is a graduate of the London School of Economics?
I don't think there are any coincidences. We're finding more and more there are no coincidences, Phil.
Yeah, I know. In fact, I can't. Can you remember the congressman's name? I can't remember. Denise. Janet works for a congressman. You don't remember his name, do you? Ron. Ron. Oh, yes, it's Ron somebody. And I'm not being disrespectful like I typically am on purpose, but there's a Ron somebody who's my congressman, and the fact that I don't know my congressman's names should tell you all you need to know about what I think about congressmen. Johnson. Who? Johnson. No, that's Senator Ron Johnson. He's the senator. Okay, we won't waste any more time on my congressman, but he's wasted a lot of time, and I can't say he, but whoever my congressman is, their office didn't start out being real helpful, but the good news is that they're being more helpful lately. So at some point, this never-ending thing is going to be solved. But in the meantime, it's $4.32 million a day for this inconvenience, and I don't think the people in the congressional or the Senate office understand that, because they don't understand simple things like they work for me, I don't work for them. David, over to you.
Yeah, right. So I'm thinking that we may have to, and I'll come to why in a minute, we may have to add the Lemelson Foundation to the list of defendants in any wrongful death suit, because it would appear Mr. Joseph Lemelson was in the nasty habit of going through the patent office and briefing himself of what the current work of major companies like Sanyo or Boeing was, and where it might lead in terms of their attempts to patent their research, and he would pre-patent it. So he would position himself in the weeds, waiting for Boeing or some other organization to introduce its product, and then accuse them of violating a patent, and essentially they would be forced into paying him protection money. So when he invents this prisoner tracking system, I'm very, very confident, Phil, he had been discussing this with your sister back in as early as 1983, and maybe someone could cross-check that. But I believe prior to the official formation of Conair, Justice, Prisoner and Alien Transportation System, the United States Marshal Service had a prisoner aircraft that they bought, I think it was a Boeing 727, in 1983. So in 1984, your sister launches the Department of Justice Asset Forfeiture Fund with Eric Holder, and I believe she runs it for a significant number of years. Maybe she runs it covertly right up to the present. So if she and Eric Holder and the various scumbags in the Department of Justice decided they wanted to launch long-range murder for hire with Conair SWAT teams, as far as I could see, they would be very well endowed, because she, at some stage, was senior counsel for the detention and deportation program of the Immigration and Naturalization Service. She developed a prisoner medical services program, which would have given her access to inject some garbage into the bloodstreams of witting or unwitting or willing or unwilling prisoners. And do you remember, she's quoted as saying in respect of Con Air and the film that was going to be, I think, came out in 1997, she said, "Our prisoners don't kick or spit." Any idea why her prisoners didn't kick or spit, Field? Over to you.
Who knows? Maybe they were asleep. You could have administered some of the dial-yield chemicals to them. Is that one of the reasons, perhaps?
Well, or that maybe they were really scared that she would crash the plane they were traveling in.
I don't think my sister can even spell crash. She's taken a lot more credit than she deserves, and she's going to pay for that eternally. However, did I just hear you say, let me think of what you just said. I'm sure I heard you say, did you, don't get embarrassed. David, did you just use the term well endowed?
I don't think I did.
Okay, chat room. On the count of 3. The first 7 people to vote will correct either me or David. Did he or did he not use the term well endowed? Don't worry, David. You don't have to watch. I'll watch just in case it doesn't go my way. Over to you.
Okay, so what I think we've got to, and I had a discussion with Craig last night, Field, is that we could produce a case study of the actus reus of the crime scene, which are the facts of the crime scene, the physical facts. I don't say we need to neglect the mens rea, but when we go into mens rea, we're talking about good or evil, guilt or innocence, love and darkness, Satanism and Luciferianism. And speaking personally, I get lost in that web of fuzzy logic, you might call it, as to who is evil and who is good, etc., etc. At least as far as I'm concerned, when we talk about the facts or the actus reus of a crime scene, we can talk about what is true and what is false. So, is it true that a Boeing 727, I think it is, could hit the outside of the Pentagon on the morning of 9/11 and punch a 14-foot hole into the inner wall of the courtyard with about 1.5 tons of debris falling inside the inner wall? And I'm saying that's false.
It is false, but their claim was not a 727. Their claim was a 757, which is also false. And isn't it interesting to the new people that the guy flying the Boeing 757, whose call sign of which was American 77, that guy happened to be my college classmate. And David, I don't want to repeat myself, just like I don't want you to repeat yourself, but just in the spirit of fairness, for any of our new people, the American 77, which did not hit the Pentagon, was flown from my college classmate. The F-16s, which did respond from Langley Air Force Base to the Pentagon, were flown by my Air National Guard unit from Fargo, North Dakota. And my own sister and Hillary did take advantage of the information I shared with my sister on some date in mid to late December of 1988, when I told her that if she's concerned about her prisoner, and those are federal prisoners, there's no federal penitentiaries in Hawaii, so if they go through the federal court system, they get a sentence, they have to be air transported to the mainland. And so I told my sister not to worry about a bunch of irritated convicts. They couldn't do anything to the airplane if it was droned. But David, I think you just said something about a complicated web.
Yes.
So just to dazzle Braveheart, because I can come up with a song for anything, and here goes, and I'll make it real short. Once there was a spider in my bed, I got caught up in her web. I'll sing that at the end if anybody wants to hear the rest of the song by Dwight Yoakam, who is from Bakersfield, California, the same area where Merle Haggard and what's his name, Buck Owens hung out. Okay, David, now that you've had a mental break, start producing.
Okay, so there are two, for me, particularly fascinating mass casualty events, which are, I guess, in one sense also they're genocidal in terms of the size and scale of the attack. That is the sabotage of the Bhopal methyl isocyanate. I've been rehearsing that I can make sure I can say that so I sound know what I'm talking about. Actually, at school I hated chemistry, but anyway, methyl isocyanate. A tank containing this, Union Carbide, which was represented by Sidley Austin in a 1991 trip to Washington, D.C., which included Michelle Obama, the spouse of Barack Obama. Union Carbide said this was sabotage. And the sabotage they described was there is no way the flushing of some tank 350 yards away or feet away from the tank that contained the methyl isocyanate could have resulted in between half and a ton of water getting into the bath methyl isocyanate, which reacts through a mechanism I don't necessarily understand, because Union Carbide says someone had removed a pressure valve from the tank and then plugged in a rubber hose to a water supply and pumped in between half a ton and a ton of water, which reacted with the methyl isocyanate ultimately to blow chlorine gas out of the plant and kill 8,000 people in the vicinity almost immediately, another 8,000 people as a result of gas-related attack or injury, and 500,000 injured Indians, predominantly Indians, I presume, some of them irreparably damaged in terms of their lifestyle or quality of life. Now that's genocidal. Now the question is, was Union Carbide right? Or was it just negligence on behalf of the directors of Union Carbide? Well, I started going through the patent lists of devices related to methyl isocyanate, and I found a very interesting patent by DuPont for the development and production of methyl isocyanate. And I suddenly realized there's a term in patent law where you say or talk of who's someone skilled in the art. Have you ever heard of that field?
Yes, I've heard of it. It's never applied to me because all I'm skillful at is scaring bad guys and coming up with song lyrics. In other words, if 10 people in the chat room gave me 10 different words, I'd come up with 10 different lyrics that I already know that have those words. But back to your chemistry, you've piqued a lot of interest in the chat room because everybody's talking about their command of chemistry or their challenges like mine were, where I just about flunked out of high school and college both over chemistry. But as I recall from one of our boring conversations previously, I think in your third year at the university there, they don't call it that, they call it something else, but when you had chemistry at Cambridge, weren't you considered somewhat a master of methane?
No, my subject was thermodynamics academically, but I did blow up a 2.5-ton diesel engine in the thermodynamics lab at Cambridge through negligence.
Okay, now when you blew up that object unintentionally, did it involve the ignition of methane or some other chemical compound?
No, it was mainly a problem with water, rather like the gas attack in Bhopal, because this 2.5-ton diesel engine, it was bolted to the floor in the thermodynamics lab at Cambridge, and it had a chimney to carry the hot gases up to the roof. And in the chimney there was a coolant spray, and what you were supposed to do was start the diesel engine, and as the diesel exhaust was going up the chimney, you'd turn on a spray to cool it down so the chimney didn't get red hot. And unfortunately, and it's purely irrelevant, I suppose I was raised as a Protestant, and I had a good friend who was a Catholic. We two, rather theoretically minded but not very practical engineers, wanted to go and have a coffee or something. Anyway, I think it was him, probably the Catholic, not the Protestant, who turned on the spray before starting the diesel engine, and so the chimney filled up with water, right? Then I came back and he came back, I think from coffee, and I assumed that he turned it on because I wouldn't be so stupid to start the diesel engine, and the diesel engine aspirated water, tried to compress it, and you probably know, even with your limited knowledge of physics, water is very hard to compress, and the diesel engine was struggling with this, and it started to sort of hiccup, which is quite impressive when a 2.5-ton diesel engine is hiccuping, and then it sheared the bolts out of the cement to the floor, and it started dancing around the lab. And I looked at the Catholic and I said, I'm out of here. I think I was talking to his back because he was on the way out. You know, Catholics get earlier warning than Protestants. And we took cover, and then this damn diesel engine disintegrated, and shards of cast iron embedded themselves in the wall of the lab. And for the rest of my career at Cambridge, I was assigned people with little white coats and notepads to try and save the lab from further losses. So do you think that undermines my credibility as a forensic economist, Phil?
Well, as, based on the last 11 and a half years, I'm not sure I've ever detected any credibility. So to answer that in a polite and respectful manner, no, I don't think it changes your reputation in the negative.
Okay, thank you, Phil, for that support. Okay, so back to this game that people seem to be playing with your sister and Mr. Joseph Lemelson and Mr. Oliver Buck Revell, where they have access to a convict or a prisoner or a fugitive pool of people through their databases, including one such database as the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, which your sister sponsored in 1984, the same year as she created the Department of Justice Asset Forfeiture Fund. These three clowns, Joseph Lemelson is now dead, Oliver Buck Revell should be swinging on the yardarm, as should your sister, but I digress. These three seem to have realized that with the prisoner or fugitive population around the world, they could have access to a SWAT team with very special skills that could be deployed to a crime scene, furnished with a script for spot, shoot, snuff, spin, spoil, and brought back or killed at the crime scene simply because they're expendables. So some of the higher value people might be locked up in ADX Florence, you know, by your sister, who incidentally I believe is responsible for the murder of Timothy McVeigh in 2001 because she popped Timothy McVeigh onto one of those Conair aircraft, and the plane apparently had been modified for decoy and drone maneuvers, presumably because your sister feared it might get intercepted. So she put Timothy McVeigh into ADX Florence. On the one side there was Ramzi Youssef, and the other side with Ted Kaczynski, and that for me would be basically a university not of terror but of crime, because those three characters, remember Ramzi Youssef was built, or is allegedly have designed the bomb for the 1993 attack on the World Trade Center, and I think he used 100 pounds of atomized aluminum powder, or does my memory deceive me? Over to you.
Did you just say 100 pounds?
Yes.
Okay, well here's my answer to you. With just 100 pounds of clay, he made my life worth living, and so I thank him every day for all the love I've been given. We rolled his big sleeves up, and a brand new world began when he created women. And I think I started in too high a key because I'm going to have to do my falsetto to hit the next part. Lots of lovin' for a man. Oh yes he did. Oh yes he did. With just 100 pounds of clay. That's by Gene McDaniel. You know, it used to be we lived in a country over on the other side of the lake that people were pleasant and kind to each other and somewhat respectful, and you didn't have to hate people that were different color, and you didn't have to hate people that were different lifestyle, and you didn't have to hate people your grandparents hated. You know, you could just sort of walk through your life and take a look at what's going on. And believe it or not, David, the parents of my parents' generation were so narrow-minded that they didn't want people like me listening to songs like that, because even though it's a beautiful song and a very beautiful thought, the person who sang it came out of the paint shop in a different color than I did. And I'll tell you what, if it weren't for black people in the U.S. and the U.K., I probably wouldn't have near the fascination I have with music. But we've been told that we have to hate each other, and that's not true. We have to love each other. So, David, I'm not going to say I love you, but I will say I love old music. And if you give me top billing when we start doing these investigations, and if we invert the 57-63% share, then I could love you a little. Well, no, I still wouldn't love you. But I love old music, and I guess I tolerate David Hawkins. That's my official statement. But did you ask me a question?
I can't remember, Phil.
Good. I wanted to put you mentally to sleep, so when you came back, you'd come back with a rush of enthusiasm to dazzle people like Preston Brooks or Ginger Cookie. You might even dazzle Sunshine, who sent me a couple of portable Faraday cages the same day I left. So the day I left Plum City, a lady in Montana, and let me give a sidebar to the lady in Montana. I was talking to the ranch person just yesterday, and even though that's been mercurial, David, I did teach you what the word mercurial means, didn't I?
Yes, you did, Phil.
Okay, good. I know that you have at least a modest background in chemistry. The progress on the ranch procedure is still proceeding, and it's which is the good news, and it's proceeding at a mercurial pace, which is tolerable news. But for the person in Montana who built a Faraday cage for me and a Faraday cage for Denise, I thank you, and I thank you also for getting us aware of lomatium, because Denise and I take lomatium every day, and I can explain that later when David goes off to detention. David, that is where you go every day at the end of the show. Isn't it detention for acting up in postgraduate school?
No. It's deception, because I'm following Sun Tzu's Art of War.
Oh. Well, I'm following Runaround Sue's Art of... which is another song, but I won't sing it. Over to you, David.
Okay, so here's a paragraph that might titillate our listeners. AD believes that the late chemical warfare expert Victor Rothschild's associates at NM Rothschild, investment banker for Serco, Queen Elizabeth II, and US President Donald Trump, and Serco shareholders, including the British government, tasked Nicholas and Rupert Soames, two of Winston Churchill's grandsons, and Con Air Marcy, with testing Darren Rubin's biological active bullets, systems, and methods, US 9200877B1, as patented, potentially ethnic or genetic or witness cleansing bullets at a BC pig farm between 1983 and 2002. Now, I hadn't visited the story of Robert Picton at the Picton pig farm, and I thought the main event to trigger the serial killings of the prostitutes at the pig farm was in 1984, when a federally registered society, Piggy Palace Good Time Society, actually 1996, Piggy Palace Good Time Society was set up by the federal government and presumably known to, or he should have known, or she should have known, to the Governor General of Canada. Now, one Governor General of Canada that, or past Governor General of Canada, should be of great interest to Americans is David Johnston, who is the only non-American chairman or president of the Harvard Board of Overseers. And I'm very confident that David Johnston concealed the background to one Barack Hussein Obama or Barry Soetoro to give Barry Soetoro a legend that would allow him ultimately to get into the White House and take his or bring his underground genocidal friends with him. But perhaps I digress. The interesting thing about a biological active bullet is you could actually put mercury in it, or you could put ricin or anthrax or whatever. And actually at the pig farm, in front of an audience maybe of 1,700 to 2,000 people, many of whom I believe were flown in on your sister's JPATs or Conair airplanes, they could actually witness a woman being shot by one of these bullets and take bets on how long it would take her to die. And the film of her death agony could be transmitted online through Starnet Communications at 425 Carroll Street, into the elite suites and elite hotels where high rollers, presumably some of them traveling on Trump Shuttle Inc. back in the late 1980s, could take bets and watch this disgusting shit and include and enjoy, apparently, child pornography. Now, I believe your sister sent up a team to confiscate the property of Starnet Communications on 20th of August 1999 and take the said property, which would include the servers, all of the files or images that would have shown who went to those pig farms to watch the women being shot and take bets on their death, down to the United States, where I believe, I'm not 100% feel certain where it was hidden, but I think that material or that technology or those systems were hidden in plain view. And I've got a number. Would you like to guess at where that might have been hidden? Over to you.
I was giving medical advice to someone for earache, and so ask me the question again, and I'll give you a run-on sentence of 23 minutes, and I'll nail it.
Okay. On the premise that it was hidden in plain view, where do you think the Starnet Communications kit that would have transmitted S&M, oath rituals, child pornography, and supported online death pool gaming, where do you think it went in the United States, or was put by your sister in the United States? Over to you.
Well, I think it went from 425 Carroll Street to a certain office in World Trade Building number 7 before it went over to 33 Canary Wharf.
Yeah, I mean, and none of us know, but during these showcase events for class action suits, I think we'll find out, because we'll be entitled to discovery. I like the idea of one possibility into the Boeing headquarters in Chicago and another possibility into Trump Tower, because one of Trump's, or the co-developer of Trump Tower, was AXA Equitable Life. The guy's name is Joseph Malone, M-E-L-O-N-E, and Joseph Malone is one of the special investors in CAI Private Equity Group, and AXA Equitable Life, or AXA, is one of the shareholders in Serco that met on the 47th floor of Tower Number 1, the North Tower, on the morning of 9/11. And I feel, again, we'll find out in discovery, that meeting where Chris Hyman came down from the windows of the World Restaurant was actually hosted by Serco's investment banker, N.M. Rothschild and Sons, and quite possibly led by or sponsored by one Wilbur Ross. And that would be a pretty kettle of fish, I believe that's a phrase, because you would have actually some prime conspirators who knew what was going on, and some really, really, really frightened representatives from the various shareholder groups. Because what I think they were experiencing, or had suddenly woken up to understand, was that the 9/11 attack was using Con Air SWAT teams and various patented devices used without the knowledge and consent of the assignee, like Boeing. But after the event, Boeing was told, well, whether you like it or not, we used your Boeing Honeywell uninterruptible autopilot to guide the aircraft into the buildings or over the buildings so that a drone could take out the buildings, and see, you are now compromised. Now, wouldn't that have something of a chilling effect on the Boeing directors? Over to you, Phil.
Yeah, they probably wouldn't want to rock the boat, would they?
No, and some of them may in fact have gone to pig farm events, or actually in a nice elite hotel watched the death throes of a prostitute after she had been shot with a hollow-nosed bullet containing, I don't know, hallucinogens or paralytics or anticoagulants where she might bleed to death. But I do remember when I was campaigning as leader of the Reform Party of British Columbia, and I've said this story before, but I think it's fairly revealing. I was talking about, this is about 10 years ago, to a potential constituent who might vote for me, about justice for the women at the pig farm. And she looked at me a little bit oddly and she said, "You know, David, my brother went to one of the raves at the pig farm and he had told her that he would rather die than appear in a court as a witness to what he saw at the pig farm." So it would have been a scene of unimaginable horror, and many of the people would have shown up at the pig farm, and the raves included between 1,700 and 2,000 people, which takes quite a bit of organizing. I don't know if you've ever organized a party for 17 or 20 people, but that would probably stretch you, Field, even though you're a very capable man.
I've done it many times. Guess where I
Right.
used to organize parties for 20 to 30 people?
Don't know.
No, it wasn't Dano. It was Astana, Kazakhstan. Whenever our human resources boss, and let me think if I can think of her name. I can picture her. That's a good thing. Hannah, Hanna. Her last name starts with DZ, Delta Zulu, Uniform Bravo, DZUB, and I'll stop right there for privacy issues. But she was from Poland, and she worked in Dublin, and she'd come to Astana, and every time she was coming to visit the pilots that worked for her, I'd organize a dinner, and we would have it at the Line Brew, and that's spelled Linebrew. And you cannot make this stuff up, David. The Line Brew restaurant in Astana, Kazakhstan is directly across the street from KGB headquarters. Now, David, if you were a fiction writer in Hollywood, you couldn't come up with that for a script, could you?
No, and in fact, I think we're obviously saying that fact is stranger than fiction. Actually, fact generates the fiction, because I think just like your sister conspired probably with Oliver Buck Revell and this guy Lemelson, who had this patent on prisoner tracking, or prisoner and fugitive tracking, I would guess, they generated a real world long-range SWAT team that could sabotage buildings and planes and kill key targets over the years, starting at least in I would say 70s, early 1970s, after your sister had served as an intern underneath, if that's not an uncomfortable position, Donald Rumsfeld, Dick Cheney, and Frank Carlucci, the head of the Carlyle Group. And this woman, she's cunning like a fox. She had to have something on those three men in order to ensure their silence after the 9/11 attack. And they each had three potential roles as whistleblowers. And somehow or other, she's terrified the hell out of them, so they kept their mouth shut. And the only way I think she could have done that is arrange those pig farm events or oath rituals with Oliver Buck Revell and Mr. Lemelson. Actually, I think he died in 1997, but his estate continues to file suit against major companies who are alleged to have violated his patents. But he never built any models. He never did anything like in a laboratory to test out his models. He was basically stealing other people's ideas from major corporations and then patenting this and then extorting concessions from those companies. So let me build in today's post, let's go on to the next paragraph. Abel Danger believes that Serco agents and the senior executive service SES associates of Kristine Conair Marcy, Phil McConnell's sister, used Jerome H. Lemelson's Conair, that's in square brackets, prisoner tracking and warning system and corresponding methods to deploy SWAT teams for Rothschild death pools to bet on the number of people who would die after a bomb inside a Sanyo Electric Company Limited's preset tuner was detonated in Irish airspace at an altitude of 31,000 feet, 9,400 meters, in the Boeing 747-237B on the Montreal-London leg of Air India Flight 182, which crashed into the Atlantic Ocean, killing 320, including 268 Canadian citizens, 27 British citizens, and 24 Indian citizens on the 23rd of June 1985. Well, I'm now a Canadian. I was British. I'm proud of both. I have a number of Indian friends up here. So fuck them all. Not my friends, obviously, but the people who put this together. Because this field was sabotage. And it was orchestrated at the highest level. It involved your sister, Oliver Buck-Revels, and Mr. Joseph Lemelson. Over to you.
Okay, you lost me. I was over getting some bicarbonate water. What was the issue that you were talking about? I got all the details at the end, but I missed the central issue.
They blew up the bomb through a preset tuner, which had been patented by Sanyo, I believe under duress. Sanyo was paying protection money to the Lemelson.
Okay, I didn't hear what airplane was bombed. Was it Pan Am?
Pan Am 18... No, Air India 182.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I didn't... There's a lot of details here, and you're talking faster than normal. You're not taking methamphetamines, are you?
No, I'm just reminded of the diesel engine blowing up, and I feel that I've got to move quickly before the next one blows up.
Okay, what's blowing up, and you have to move quickly?
The diesel engine, it's in my memory bank that if I make a mismove, something may blow up, so I thought I would transfer the maximum amount of information into your processing plant, so it gets transferred.
Sometimes less is more, because when you talk too fast or I talk too fast, people can't keep up or take notes. But if we talk nice and slow, like we've just had a doggy downer, then everyone can keep up. Not everybody has a motor that runs at the same speed. That's all I'm saying. And we don't have to save the world. The world is going to be saved. But I see some negativity in the chat room, and like somebody says, and I know this person, I won't name her, but she knows me and she knows Denise, and she has questions about Trump. Well, of course, everybody wants everybody to have questions about those who are acting like they are in charge. But without getting off on too big of a sermon, would somebody named Braveheart put in Psalm 118:8? Because what it'll tell all of us to do, whether we believe the book or not, it'll tell us all not to trust in man. And all these people are playing a part, and it's way beyond our ability to know for certain if they are good people playing a good part, or if they're good people that have been coerced into playing a bad part, or if they're a bad person playing a bad part, or a bad person who's been coerced into playing a good part. But I've dealt with a lot of bad people, and most of them are in the United States government or the state government or Wisconsin, but I don't necessarily bow to those people. And they might, I don't know how this all ends, but I know what's right and I know what's wrong, and I know that Psalm 118:8 is not a misprint because I've proven it to myself many times. Whoever's putting up all the pictures of Astana, and I think it's Braveheart, Astana is a beautiful city, but there's something nobody should take faith in, because that's being, Astana didn't used to exist. The current Prime Minister of Kazakhstan created Astana because there were dueling mafia teams in Kazakhstan, one that was stronger in the south, one that was stronger in the north. The current Prime Minister of Kazakhstan was either a member of or very friendly with the northern mafia, so as a show of force, he said, to heck with all you guys in Almaty. It's Almaty. The Almaty has about 2 million people, I believe, and Astana probably has less than 1 million. But Astana is a very clean and extremely showy modern city, and Almaty is not clean, it's not showy. There's nothing that I enjoyed about being there. That doesn't mean much. I got a picture of a one-man band. The very first weekend I was in Almaty, I saw a guy probably about my age that was playing 7 instruments at once. And I don't know if I can find it, but I've published that picture before, and David, I said that was you. So I'm going to amuse myself by trying to find your picture. It may not be there. And when I don't remember who it was that swiped a bunch of my computer stuff and my email addresses. It was probably the FBI or the CIA. But I lost, at least I think I lost, a whole pile of images I took in Kazakhstan when I got there in February 2008. So all we have to do is you can work as hard as you want to work, and I can work as hard as I think I'm capable of working. But at the end of the day, this is all going to be decided. Thanks a lot, Braveheart. It is better to trust in the Lord than to put confidence in men or man. Psalm 118:8. Yeah, I don't know how all this ends, but I know I have the ability to control my thought and have confidence in what I want to have confidence in. And if you take a look at the world's leaders, you've got Macaroni Man in France, and you got the son of Fidel in Canada, and you got an unknown gender in England. I mean, I wouldn't put confidence in any of these people. And then this woman who I'm trying not to name, although she does have an agent name, let me think of what her agent name is. Oh yes, Agent Bugs. You know, I don't want her to be worried about Trump, because Trump is not really the president. And of course people are rolling their eyes right now. But he's playing a part, and he's being paid $30 billion to play it. And the military are the people that put him in power. And the military don't want to go over to Iran and Israel. Why would they? Look what happened when the military went over to World War I, World War II, Korea, and the Desert Storms. The U.S. military took all the hits, bled all the blood, and the other countries sort of, you know, were in the back lines, probably playing cards and drinking sarsaparilla. So I think the mood of the current military is we're not necessarily interested in dying for foreign countries, because we've been there and done that since 1776, and it hasn't worked out in our favor. David, do you have any idea? And this is a fair question. I do not have an idea, but I will get it, because I'm going to ask Gobsmack in advance to find out how many U.S. veterans are buried in Belgium. I'm going to ask Braveheart to find out how many U.S. veterans are buried in France. And in the spirit of protecting the legacy, the memory, and the persons themselves that were lost fighting foreign wars, I would encourage General Dunford, General Mattis, General Kelly, and Donald Trump, private businessman, to bring the men home. We don't need to be an enforcement agency for some corrupt bankers and equally corrupt, if not more corrupt, phony baloney governments. This guy Macaroni Man from France. Now, David, I'm going to ask you a point-blank question. Do you know that France is holding $425 trillion of U.S. Value?
No, I didn't.
I think they are. And this is going to blow the minds of anyone out there that's listening. But correct me if I misspeak, David first in the chat room second. But wasn't Macaroni Man from France in Washington, D.C. last week? Do you recall, David? I think it was last week.
Yes.
Okay. And some people who are critical of everything except themselves were saying it looks like Trump might have bowed to Macaroni Man. I don't think so. You know, if you think about a book that he wrote, and I think the name of the book is The Art of the Deal. I'm not thinking about this right now. I thought about it a week or so ago. But if Donald Trump appeared to be weak in dealing with Macaroni Man, that may be in the eyes of the people that don't know that Donald Trump could have demanded $425 trillion of assets, of property, of value that France has basically inherited or swindled from us. They've got more. France has more into us, I believe. In other words, if we could collect our debts from France as a nation on nation debts, I think it may be more than anything that Britain may owe us. Plus, in order to get money from Britain, somebody would have to deal with Cucumber Girl, and you wouldn't want to have that happen to your worst enemy. So, David, I think it's impossible for any of us. We can all think as hard as we can, but I'm not talking about you now, but I'm thinking for this lady, Agent Bugs, to try to figure out what Trump is really doing. He wrote a book called The Art of the Deal. And if somebody held a gun to my head and said what went on between Macaroni Man and Trump, I'd say maybe they made a deal for splitting the $425 trillion that they rightfully owe us. And if anyone, I don't want to bore everyone, but if anyone wants to know why France owes us $425 trillion, just email me, fieldmcc@yahoo.com, and I'll tell you who to contact, what to read, or what to Google. to establish the fact that what I've just said, America, the United States, is owed $425 trillion in value, and yet American taxpayers are worried about a $20 trillion national debt. Well, first of all, that's also garbage. But if people insist on reading the mainstream media, watching TV and radio, don't expect to feel any more confident about what's really going on. Donald Trump was positioned by military white hats to work for them. So, David, that's an opinion. That's not a fact. If anybody wants to know where I got my opinion, email me and I'll tell you. Over to you, David.
Yeah, and of course, what we have to remember is that Macaroni worked with NM Rothschild, and so I believe the outcome of the discussions between Trump and Macaroni would have been determined by the shadowy figures behind NM Rothschild and Sons Limited, which is the fifth oldest bank in the UK, that was formed, I believe, in 1811, about the time that the Brits decided not to burn down the patent office in Washington, because Dr. William Thornton said that this is a gift for all mankind. So that was the one government building that they left standing, right through to 1836, when I think they burnt the sucker down after stealing the first 10,000 patents and models and designs and methods of manufacture to fuel or turbocharge the Industrial Revolution in the United Kingdom. And the absurd situation right through to the present, where Serco controls the United States Patent and Trademark Office. So I think Trump and Macron are obviously the targets for entrapment and extortion and blackmail. The extent to which they've bowed their heads, I don't know. We'll probably never understand. But it does come back to my basic position field is that we're strongest with actus reus, i.e. the facts of the case. And then we can determine from the facts the who and the why. So we look at the what and the how, and then we go to the who and the why. So that Air India 182 bomb was triggered from a Sanyo tuner, a patented Sanyo tuner, where the number one suspect, the woman who allegedly sold the Sanyo tuner for that bombing campaign, said it wasn't to the guy who was ultimately convicted. So let me read the penultimate paragraph of this post today. Abel Danger will help leaders of injured communities to develop crowd-funded film productions and lawsuits, so that while claims for damages for wrongful deaths appear in the online courts of public opinion, where parenthetically I may say I believe Abel Danger controls the online courts of public opinion, because all the other online courts are basically injecting fake news, and we're not. For wrongful deaths appear in the online courts of public opinion, scripts for physical acts causing deaths, actus reus, associated with the negligent, reckless, willful, fraudulent, or concealed use of patented devices and spoliation of evidence, can be published on the AD website without attempting to prove mental intent to murder, mens rea. So I preface this, the show field by saying that I'm pondering about the business model for Abel Danger. I think we have the ability to do a case study, a 5 to 10 minute promotional video that lays out the case that Craig has very kindly agreed to produce, and he's already produced many in that genre, if that's the right word. And then we invite the injured community leaders to pop, I would say, not to be out of line, $100,000 into Abel Danger to promote that. Is bicameral the right solution? I think the right word, I don't know. It's basically to combine the court of public opinion through docudramas with the court of public opinion that ensures the injured parties are not denied their right to justice through any statute of limitations, because my understanding is there are quite a few jurisdictions that say, and that was so in 911, if you've taken the money to drop any further claim, or your rights to claim as a class action suit has expired, I think that restriction on that right is to be removed if there is evidence of fraud or spoliation of evidence. And, for example, do we have spoliation of evidence? We've got it coming out of our yin-yang, although I don't know anatomically where that sits in your particular situation, Phil.
Well, let me tell you, David, I'm sitting on my yin-yang at this very moment, and Denise is my witness if you want to interrogate her.
Oh, is that true, Denise?
I am sitting on my yin-yang, aren't I?
Yes.
And I'll show the people that.
Does she smile? Is she smiling? Because I always believe a smile hides a hidden agenda.
No, well, not with her. She and I can read each other like a book, and we both know there's no. If there's any chance, it's extremely small that we could lie and get away with it, because it would break our hearts to tell each other a lie. I know it would mine, and I know it is. Not because she's told me, just because I know her behavior and her thought processes and her morality. That's not to say that we can't ensure or enjoy a good laugh if we laugh a lot, because we see how everybody's being misled by the world, and they're forgetting. I'm looking out a window right now, and there's trees that are in full foliage, and it's a beautiful day. And there's so many people that want to waste every day thinking how horrible everything is. And I got to be honest, that's one of the things I like about coming over here to the UK. And it's not the UK I like, it's that I'm further away from what I perceive to be my problems. My problems aren't my problems. My problems are people trying to persecute me and mislead me and impoverish me. And that sounds paranoid right up until I finish it with statement number 4. They're trying to do that to everybody. I'm no different. They want, anytime you get mail from some corporation with all capital letters, they're trying to commit a fraud upon you. They're trying to ruin your day. They're trying to scare you. They're trying to take your property. And I sort of got tired of worrying about it. So what I did was I joined you 11 and a half years ago, and over the first 10 years and 9 months I trained you to appear to know some things that are difficult to embrace, because I knew that I might lose control of my mouth if I tried to explain it. So I applaud you in your moderation, but if you ever get upset, start ranting and raving, I'm going to take the reins and tell you to get in the back of the stagecoach. How do you feel about that?
Well, I think there's multiple metaphors where you've lost me, but that's all right.
Well, that's what I do. I'm like a squid. When it's time to get out of town, pump the ink and go.
Yeah, and I think that's very interesting. I've never quite understood the power of chaff and ink until I met you, where I think any intelligence agency trying to get their head around Abel danger, wrestling between the spectrum of values that we apply to a crime scene, good and evil, guilty or innocent, or truth or falsehood, they're going to get lost. And that's great, because the enemy, as powerful as it is, it's much more valuable from our point of view to have them underestimate me. And, it's very easy for them to underestimate me when they hear you ranting.
Well, David, and I'm sort of showing my cards to any of the agencies who might listen to this, but do you think there's any chance that with some of the stuff I was writing in 2007, 2008, 2009, do you think anybody that had a relatively good judgment, a college education, and common sense, which you don't usually get a college education and common sense in the same person, but those types of people, don't you think for the first 3 years I was writing fiction that I would be easily discredited by anybody with a brain?
Oh, totally.
And do you remember who told us that's what I was doing? You and I were being interviewed by a lady, and she said, this is going to sound like I'm blowing my horn, of course I'm not. The lady's name was Raylan Allen. Do you remember the time she said that I was doing something that was brilliant?
I think I'm remembering the gist of it, but I don't remember the exact words.
Well, you know how I always interrupt with a question. She said, Field, I think you've done something brilliant. I said, wait a minute, did you address that to me or David? And she said, no, I addressed it to you. I think you've done something that's absolutely brilliant. And I said, well, Raylan, pardon my uncomfortable response, but I've never had to answer that charge before. But maybe you're misinterpreting something I've said or done. Raylan, what do you think that I've done that's brilliant? And this is so simple. I'll remember it until the NSA guns me down. She says, "You have totally discredited yourself." And what she meant was because when I was writing, I take David's extremely difficult to do and difficult to communicate research, and I would make it such that anybody that was in 10th grade with a C- average could understand it. But what I also did was to keep myself interested in this long process, 11 and a half years, when I was writing the fiction to cover his facts. In other words, if David gave me 10, I'd say 12 points, I could write 12 chapters, probably 20 to 30 pages per chapter about the point. If he said that on the morning of 9/11, Axia and Carlton Baltels suffered egregious losses, I didn't understand anything I just said, and I'm me. But I'd take what I didn't understand what David said, and I'd apply an old song to it, because I like old songs, and I would apply a pastel color to it, because I really like pastel colors. But the whole pastel thing, David, you used to get so upset with me. You'd say, "Okay, that's 7 books. Can you write 1 book without a pastel color review?" And I said no. But that's what Raylan meant.
Yes.
The stuff that I wrote will sometimes get a PhD for being stupid, but it provided us both with political cover, because nobody's going to come out and try to arrest me for what I wrote, because the first question out of a neutral's mouth, like a judge, or I'd force it in court, I'd say, "Well, do you know what I wrote?" And they'd say no, and I'd say, "Well, if somebody will pick one of my first 3 books and go to page 3 of chapter 3, I'll read paragraph 3, and there's no way in the world that I'd know what was in there, because I launch and leave, which is a military term, which in this case means write and then go to the next writing. I don't have time to read my stuff. If I read it, I'd probably be a little bit embarrassed and totally energized and humored, because it's so easy to make fools out of these political figures like John Kerry. At one point, he was our State Department puppet, but he looks like one of those guys on the Munsters. I think it was Herman Munster. But all of these people, Thunder Thighs, you make a fool out of her just by saying Thunder Thighs. How about John McCain? Well, Lumpjaw. And so anybody who, and I have every right to do this, David, no matter what anybody in the earth thinks, except for Denise. If I see people attacking my country, I'll attack them back in the way that I find most efficient. And since I have no weapons, and since I have no money, I just attack them with the truth. And I think it's working, David, and that's why you and I are not incarcerated or hospitalized. Over to you.
Yeah, I think you're right. And while you were going on that wonderful rant, which I agree 100%, I'm thinking of this organization called the Marine Corps Intelligence Activity, and I was trying to weave an appropriate title for the Marine Corps Intelligence Activity, which is global, where hypothetically and perhaps in reality, the MCIA has been infiltrated and they haven't noticed, in which case I think I would be entitled to call it the Marine Corps Stupidity Agency. Now, do you think that would excite well, who knows whether it would excite the interest of the Marine Corps generals? And I know they're not stupid, but this conspiracy of using the patent office to infiltrate Con Air prisoners and fugitives into the Marine Corps intelligence activity, to literally have the Marine Corps stand down at key places around the world, for example, the Khobar Towers in Saudi Arabia, because my understanding is one arm of the Marine Corps is to provide security at United States embassies and military installations around the world. Have I understood that correctly? Over to you.
Say it a little bit slower, because I'm thinking slowly today due to the fact that I'm so relaxed. Here's an oxymoron action. When I came into customs this time, that was the 4th time in a row where I got a very warm greeting. and they're obligated to ask a question. They just have to. It's part of their protocol. So the fellow, when he saw me coming up, I was smiling, he was smiling, and he said, "Oh, what brings you to England?" I said, "I'm coming to visit my wife." And he says, "Where does she live?" And I said, "Well, she lives down by Frimley and Camberley, which is in Surrey." And he said, and he handed me my passport back that fast. And he said, "Well, have a nice visit." And they know what's in my passport. There's a chip in there. And I don't know what's on the chip, and I don't care, because I am truthful. And I also I don't mean any harm to any good person, and I'm willing to be an advocate for everybody who's attacked by evil. That's sort of what I do. But, you know, with the way I write about the United Kingdom, you would think that if Cucumber Girl or the guy with the mop head, I can't remember his name. Do you remember Mophead's name? Is it Boring?
Boris Johnson?
Yes, Mophead. You know, I'm somewhat accurate in my portrayal of these people, which means they would take it as great unwarranted criticism. Well, if they look in the mirror, maybe they don't have mirrors. If I was Boris Johnson, I probably wouldn't look in one. I'm not sure if the Cucumber Girl is a Cucumber Girl or a Cucumber Boy, but I think she's planted to serve someone, and whoever planted her, you know, should not expect a good crop. David, over to you.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, and we should always remember her career, Theresa May's career, because she worked with the Bank of England in the International Settlements Department, where there's a tremendous potential for laundering money and directing it at members of these so-called Con Air SWAT teams, either before or after a major act of sabotage. And going back into the patent pool, there's an outfit called MISYS, M-I-S-Y-S. It has a system for geolocation of people for banking purposes. So they follow you through or past point-of-sale machines, ATMs, bank accounts, etc., through to, let's say, a prospective crime scene. So one could argue that it's highly likely MISYS would be able to identify who could be blackmailed and bribed, blackmailed with Facebook images that show them either through Photoshop or in reality engaged in some kind of abusive behavior with a child, or bribed in the sense that they could have some money put into their bank account if they didn't describe what they had seen at a crime scene. And then it's important to remember that one of the parties who worked for MISYS was a Soames brother. I think it was Rupert Soames, or maybe it was Nicholas Soames. My point is, when you're putting a crime scene together on this scale, like 9/11 or the 7/7 underground bombing, you've got to move the hoods and the fugitives into position before the crime occurs, quite obviously. They have to have access to special weapons that allow them to, I think the technical word is dress the crime scene, so it looks as though the perpetrator is someone other than them. And of course, if you look at 9/11, what's totally absurd is the exercise Amalgam Virgo on the 1st and 2nd of June of 2001, which portrays the leader of the Red Team as Osama bin Laden. And they forget to tell us, or tell the American public, that the offices of the bin Laden group was in London. So it's very obvious that this is what is known as a man-in-the-middle attack, where Osama bin Laden certainly didn't have access to the special weapons and tactics needed to steer the aircraft through their various decoy and drone maneuvers, and he wouldn't have had access to the various technologies that would allow you to rebalance your investment portfolio when certain company shares went down as a result of the attack, including the insurance companies, and certainly company shares went up, as in the case of Boeing, Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, or Raytheon, whose assets were used on 9/11. So the last paragraph of today's post: with this, the 270th Kelly public briefing. General Kelly, wake up. 270th Kelly public briefing. You can't say that you weren't warned. We believe we can help the Trump administration to strip Serco, Conair and the senior executive service out of any contracts with the United States, especially the allegedly fraudulent contracts with the United States Patent Office, FAA contract towers and the visa and ammunition centers, and help you complete the job which you started as Secretary of Homeland Security to defend America against all enemies, domestic and foreign. And the enemy pool, if you will, is both domestic and foreign. It's a flat organization, basically a matrix, which I think the RCMP defined very well as a virtual floating matrix of organized crime. These people are criminals, they're not terrorists. Terror is an instrument. And the business model that I'm happy to brainstorm with you and anyone else in the inner core of the Abel Danger organization is, I think, very powerful, because I think we can now approach the leaders of injured communities. And I noticed that the majority of people killed on Area India 182 were Canadian, an almost equal number of Brits and Indian people. And there's an injured community there whose leaders, I think, are bewildered because they don't know who to go for or go after. And I think Abel Danger can demonstrate that the party that has had custodial rights in the patent pool dating back to 1802, when the first superintendent of the United States Patent and Trademark Office, the Anglo-American Dr. William Thornton, the architect of the Capitol building, who, I don't say he was a crook, but he was certainly corrupt, because someone came along who had tried to invent and patent a rifle, and Dr. William Thornton told him that it had already been invented. It hadn't, actually, but he referred to the Ferguson rifle that was patented in 1776, an interesting year for the United States of America. And he said, if, however, you add my name, that's Dr. William Thornton, to the invention, I'll give you a patent. Well, fast forward, I suggest Joseph Lemelson and various other patent trolls did something very similar in the case of the convict tracking. They got their name added to a patent and basically, directly or indirectly, took control of the movement of your sister's prisoners and fugitives on Conair for the attack of 9/11. So I think we're in a very powerful position to say to leaders of injured communities, all right, we can put together a case study, we can put together a 5 to 10 minute promotional video that I'm happy to do with Craig, that will orchestrate and market this service from Abel Danger. If you like what you see, you can pop 100K in and we will take you to the next stage, which is a coordinated, orchestrated might be too sort of controlling the word, crowdfunding of a docudrama and a class action lawsuit in the court of public opinion. And you would then, that is to say, the injured community, be looking at tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars of claim that are justified on the basis of actus reus. Over to you, Phil.
I've got two interesting things to share with you. One is more interesting to you, David, and let me see if I found it. Okay, if you go up from the bottom, there's two things from Field. Okay? Well, I'm waiting, hopefully Denise will be back. I don't want to let the cat out of the bag, but now wait a minute. What's Agent Bugs? Agent Bugs, what are you responding to? Okay, well, she's out, and so I don't want to be impolite. Number one is I just put up something I got from a Foxtrot Alpha and Denise is back. What I just pasted about the Titanic, and you know, this came from somebody who used his name, and it's anyway, he says that there's new research. You're going to find this stunning, David, and you'll wish you discovered it. That's not an unkind remark. It's just the way you are. You would have loved to discover this. It looks like the Titanic never hit an iceberg. Now, would that surprise me? No. because Islamist pilots never hit the trade center. We're led to believe, but let's put negativity behind us. I just got an email from the visa center, and Denise's visa interview has been scheduled, and that is the last thing we were waiting for. Isn't that true? Oh yeah, yeah. They give her a physical, but the only reason they give her a physical is to generate more money, because they can force a certain group of doctors to perform the physicals, and that way they get a little bit more money. That's my opinion, but who cares? I mean, all of us care, but it's insignificant. You know, we've been waiting, let's see, December to June. That'll be 18 months, I think. I'm doing the math here, help me. December 2016 to June of 2018. That's either 18 or 19 months. Now, is there anything that they could find fault within me that would keep her out? They're trying to, but I don't think they're going to succeed. And I don't want to bring negativity into this, but they're a little bit concerned that I couldn't produce tax forms for the last year or three. Doesn't matter. Americans are not required to pay tax. It's a voluntary operation. It always has been. I don't think there. In fact, I'm going to challenge the chat room for the Americans, and that includes Agent Bugs. I'm going to take a 30-second break after I ask this question, David. I want to see if one American out there knows this. I want to know if any American in the chat room knows at which point in your life have you, as an American taxpayer, volunteered to pay tax? Because the IRS and every element of the government promise us it's a voluntary tax. And it is. But is there a single American within the sound of my voice that knows when you elected to pay tax? David, just let's give it 30 seconds and see if anybody knows. Oh, I better start timing. And see, David, the way this tax thing applies to the general conversation, there's a song in 1967, "When the truth is known to be lies." And see, that's what I just got the suggestion from the guy in British Columbia, and you can look at that later at your leisure, and then you can contact the guy. There's 30 seconds. Let's see if anybody knows when they volunteered to pay taxes. Oh, good. Thank you for putting that up, Preston. IRS director, mixed taxes are voluntary. Now, you don't know, Preston, how helpful that is, because that was 5 years ago. And I know for sure, anytime you file a 1040, you volunteer. I'm going to correct you just a little bit. Yeah, I think you're academically absolutely right. But the very first time you sign a 1040, that is the point where you volunteered to pay voluntary taxes. Well, I can tell you the day I told them to stick it in their nostril, it was May 22nd of 2015, and there's a YouTube out there, and somebody may find it. If not, I'll stay in the chat room after the show and find it. It includes IRS, Field McConnell, and something like repudiation, I don't know. But it's a 6-minute YouTube, and it directs you on how to unvolunteer, and it's according to the IRS code. So I'm not afraid of anybody in customs making an issue of the IRS, because they can only make an issue of it if they're in violation of the laws that exist in the United States of America. So David, do you find it interesting that nobody in America knows when David Russum did, and somebody else did. But I've never met an American, and I've been one since I was born, and I'm a very youthful 68, and I'm looking forward to being a very youthful 69. But I consider today a great victory, and it's not a victory that Denise and I have accomplished by somehow coercing, which we couldn't, or affecting, which we couldn't. But somehow we survived a 19-month separation, because I don't think a lot of married couples of any age could do that. It's sort of hurtful. So David, do you have anything else to add to this? But it just turned into a good day, because She has her appointment set for next month, and I think I'd be very surprised if she doesn't. I'll probably go back for a little while and come back in early June, maybe on D-Day, June 6th. We'll look at it. But I might not go back. I don't have to go back. But there may be a reason why I need to go back. One reason is I've got three new grandchildren in the last 5 months. And my grandson that was born on April 28th, his mom and dad would like to bring him to the farm. I'd like it better if they brought him with Denise was there. But when you see a chance, take it. David, over to you.
Yeah, well, that's very exciting. And in case you need ammunition in respect of the IRS and voluntary payments, you might be armed. Sometimes I think what I can do for you, Field, is, maybe I've covered that before, supply you with azimuth and ammunition and elevation for your attacks on the network, on the system. And I think a classic example would be, and I'm sure it's not just me, but the elevation for 911, where the main conspirators met, I believe, was the 47th floor of the North Tower, where I believe hosted by NM Rothschild's representative, Wilbur Ross, the Serco shareholders met and engaged allegedly in death pool betting on the number of dead that would result at the various crime scenes from these decoy and drone maneuvers with patented devices. I also point out, Field, that the IRS sent up a team. Actually, I think more accurately, I believe your sister sent up a team from the IRS to take away the servers and information and files and equipment that would have contained visual evidence of extreme SOM, S&M, sadomasochistic oath rituals at the pig farm, child pornography, and online gaming, where an audience of up to 1,700 to 2,000 people and an online audience in elite hotels around the world would bet on the outcome of a woman being shot by one of these biological bullets in the pig farm raves, and they bet on the length of time before it took her to die. So the IRS is severely complicit, and I believe on the 25th floor of the building number 7, there was a command center for the 911 attack, where the CIA, Department of Defense, and IRS used the war room to select the timing of the various targets, probably including the time of demolition of the North and South Towers, which would involve predicting the number of dead members of the Fire Department of New York, which I think totaled 343. So that was quite an opportunity for spread bettors of extreme cynicism to bet on the deaths of very brave men and women as they went through those extraordinary attacks of 911. So anyway, Field, I think this has been a great show, and like I said, I'm exploring a business model which I'll run by you and Tim and Craig, and the idea that we are now in a position at Abel Danger to offer a funded service to injured communities where they can, or we can help them produce a docudrama of actus reus and crowd-centric funding, if that's the right term, and the basis in a court of public opinion, initially, for a class action suit for damages in respect of wrongful deaths, which should result in almost all the major crimes that we've looked at over the last 11 years, an award of hundreds of millions of dollars to the injured community through our good services and as an honest broker. And just as people will always tend to say, oh, you're out for the dollar, let me add, my understanding of any law firm working on contingency for a action in the courts on this scale, they would ask for 30% on contingency if they weren't getting paid in other ways. And I think Abel Danger would ask for 1/2 of whatever the going rate for the law firm is, because I think primarily we're not interested in the dollars. What I am interested in is developing that sort of cookie cutter approach. So any crime scene, whether it's the Bhopal gas murders or the Air India tuna bomb, we can promote solutions for injured communities around the world, stretching back into history. And one of the great crimes of the 1980s, I would suggest, is the Tiananmen Square massacre by the Communist Chinese. And that was covered up by one General Alexander Haig, who actually went to the celebrations afterwards and congratulated the Communist Chinese on their rigor and discipline in putting down the rebellious peasants who tried to argue against the tyranny of the communist dictatorship, which has now got stronger as a result of the weakness of people like Bill Clinton. Over to you, Phil.
Yeah, okay, well, I'm going to say one thing here that's pretty vague because it involves severe privacy issues. But one of our Abel Danger agents, who recently became somewhat quiet, has been forcibly made a patient of a psychiatric hospital. Now, they've done this to people like me. They haven't gotten me yet, but they do it to everybody. If you know the truth, and you have some cojones, which is Spanish for courage, the system doesn't like you. I don't know if he's in the chat room right now. There's a pilot that's just ending a 14-year battle for doing the right thing. It was 11 years ago. No, it was 12 years ago that I stood my ground and told the United States government, you can get other people to lie, but you're not going to get me to lie. And 9/11 was a lie. And I know anyway, let's not, I'm not going to, I'll tell Denise who it is. But all I can say is somebody must have been praying for this male or female that just has a release date from a loony bin. See, if you don't play their game, they declare you incompetent. Well, I've got 2 words for them, and I'm a man of few words, so I'll keep them to myself. But it's very easy for people to get overwhelmed by power and evil. But Abel Danger is going to, I think we're getting some tangible results already in the evil, and I want to get back to the IRS. I made a comment in the chat room that I think before Donald Trump leaves office, he's either going to eliminate the IRS or reconfigure it because it's not working the way it is and it's abusive. And the money does not go to the U.S. government. I'll leave it at that. David, anything else you want to talk about?
Just a shout out again for the Discord chat room. And I do get a little confused between the two, but I think they both have, they're both vehicles for communicating with different networks, and I've just been started to go to Discord, just like on the live stream chat room, and some very good researchers out there, so I think I would encourage people to dip into both. Over to you.
Okay. Well, I think I mentioned it publicly, but we just found out during the last 20 minutes of this show that Denise has her visa interview scheduled in June, so that's a very good day for us, and we're not going to assume everything's smooth sailing, but it's heading in the right direction. And there was something else good. Oh yeah, the person that was in the loony bin, I didn't know that, but it's good to know that he or she has been released. And is there anything else we need to say, Denise? No? Okay. I think we're up to date, David. If you wanna go, I'll hang around and sing 2 songs, but that's up to the song ladies to pick the song. And if anybody, after David goes, if anybody wants to come up with a scripture that I'm not familiar with right now and do a prayer, we can certainly do that. David, whenever you want to go, if you think you can beat me, you can try to hang up on your own.
Just hang in there, Field.
Okay,
Yeah,
but
if you
I
can,
feel like
yeah,
turning
just
the
hang
camera.
in for a moment.
Don't worry, you don't have to tell me twice, David. You said hang in there. I'm hanging in
Right. Okay. So you can, if you could yak gently on for a minute, I'm just going to drop in one paragraph that relates to the IRS.
there. Okay, go ahead and drop it in.
No, well, you I want you to yak for a minute, just to allow me to get to this particular paragraph, and I can paste
Okay,
it in.
like I always tell you, Mr. Mumbles, I know a song for every word, and when it comes to yak, yakety yak, don't talk back. I don't like that song, so I'm not going to sing it. Plus, you can't really sing that song. I don't know. I know that the worst song ever recorded was Archie Bells and the Drells for Houston. And if you ever want to listen to a song that is absolutely without value, and it was 1968. It was called "Tighten Up" by Archie Bell and the Drells, and it goes like this. There's a guitar and a little drumming going on in the background, and he says something like, "Hi everybody, this verbatim quote, I'm Archie Bell and the Drells from Houston, Texas, and we can sing just as good as we want." And he says, we're going to do a song now called the Tighten Up. Tighten up on the guitar back there, and they hear a guy go, boom, 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 and he goes, tighten up. Yeah, that's it. Tighten up. And then he brings in the drums, the saxophone, probably brings in a 64-man marching band from Maine with everyone that has to be a midget or a dwarf or what we like to say, little person. It's the worst song, and I don't think it's good enough to ignore. I think you have to speak out. After 50 years, I'm doing the math here, 68 to 18. Yep, 50 years of being the worst song I ever heard. David, are you back?
Not quite, Phil.
Not quite?
No.
Oh, well, take your time. I'll come up with, I know what. Here's a song that I wish I could sing well because everybody needs to listen to it, and it would honor the person who sang it. And his name was Glenn Campbell. And when he introduced this in South Dakota in 2002 at a wonderful concert with the Philharmonic, or the, whatever you call it, South Dakota State Orchestra, he said one of his friends had written this, and he thinks it's one of the most important songs he ever sang. And it starts like this. Denise, can you give me a C minus? We're not good at music. When you see your brother walking down the road with a heavy load from the seeds he's sowed, and if you see your sister standing by the way, just stop and say, you're going the wrong way. You've gotta try a little kindness, yes, show a little kindness, shine your light for everyone to see. And if you try a little kindness, you'll overcome the blindness. Narrow-minded people on the narrow-minded street. Then it goes, you need another verse, or are you okay? We need another verse. Wait a minute, now I can't think of the other verse. Don't walk around the down and out. Lend a helping hand instead of doubt. And the kindness that you show every day will help someone along their way. Okay, David, am I supposed to put on an entire 3-hour song medley?
No, I'm ready. I popped it in, and the article that I popped in is headed Starnet Raid Included IRS and US Customs Officials. I believe one of the titles of the agencies, or the route agencies, was Immigration and Customs Enforcement. And remember, your sister is right now, I believe, a trustee of the ICE Foundation, with influence or control over 49,000 former and current agents of ICE around the world, meaning she would be fully apprised of anything that was going on in respect of Denise's visa. I don't know which way she's thinking right now, but we should understand that when Starnet was raided by the IRS and US Customs officials and about 100 law enforcement people in the across Canada, I'm not sure that the Canadian government gave permission for the Americans to send up a couple of SWAT teams, orchestrated by your sister. And it's vitally important for the women at the pig farm, who died at the pig farm, and their relatives to understand where the visual evidence of what took place at the pig farm probably went. My instincts favor building number 7, but being digital images, they could have been broadcast online through the headquarters office of Boeing in Chicago or to the AXA office in Trump Tower. Either way, those images, I believe, have been hidden in plain view. They're accessible to encrypted asymmetric insiders, if you will, and those people need to be hauled before the courts and pay the ultimate penalty. Over to you, Phil.
Okay, well, this looks like it's good news day for Field and Denise, because I just got something else I'm going to put in the chat, and I don't know if the person who sent me this, and pardon me for sounding somewhat excited and disjointed, I've got to take the person's real name out, and you know what, a lot of our people don't care if I put the real names in, but that's their decision, not mine. I'll read it first to make sure I don't make a mistake. Get a load of this, and I hope everyone's listening. This is pretty interesting, and David, it benefits you too. Hi, Field. I paid the registration fee and secured my room. I saw you are a speaker at John B. Wells Caravan to Midnight Fall Conference. I hope we finally get to shake hands. Hopefully, too, Denise will be with you. And then she says, God bless you. DCA, I'm just editing as I go, DCA Jill. Now I'm going to see if DCA Jill is in the chat room. And if she is, she goes by JILL. And she's not, but she's listening apparently. So, you know, what a nice hour and a half or hour and 45 minutes, because I think we're going to get the IRS shut down. I strongly feel that way. It looks like Denise will be back in Plum City by mid-June, which is nothing compared to the last 18 months. And there's something else that just happened that was good, but I'm so excited about Denise's visa, all the rest of it fades into the sunset. So, David, are you ready to call it quits?
Yeah, and there's just one more post about the RCMP using the IRS, and I would suggest, Phil, that we can, as a result of some of these class action suits, involve the IRS in terms of spoliation of evidence of contract killing at the pig farm, which will undermine somewhat the Americans' faith in their IRS, and maybe help bring these scumbags, obviously they're not all scumbags, down to the ground. So I'm ready to quit, Field, and I do like to go out on a win.
Okay, I was just going to ask the chat room, and I just posted it. Could somebody find the announcement or the program for the Caravan to Midnight John B. Wells November conference in Dallas, Texas on Veterans weekend, which is 10/11. I think that they told me I was speaking on the 11th, but I'd like to see that. But more importantly, I would like to have everybody in the Able Danger world see it before I go. And I want to express just one more time, so I don't bore everybody, that Denise and I were very pleased to see that her interview appointment has been set. And I'm very confident that they're not going to rock the boat at this point. Also, as far as the IRS, I don't think, never say never, but I don't think they would dare make an issue of that at this point, because they know that their deceit is being exposed every single day in many, many different ways. And at some point here, the balance of power is shifting towards we the people. So let's see. I'm going to keep up. Let's see. I paid the registration fee. I got that. Okay, let me scroll down and see if I can find somebody. Thanks for the big red button, but I'm not going to do it because I got 2 songs to sing. And I don't see anything about the conference, but I saw somebody might try to find the conference schedule. I'm going to go. I saw 2 songs a minute ago, and I'm not sure excuse me, I'm not sure what they are. Field, please make a CD. Okay, make a CD about what? Keolani. In fact, I think it's Keolani Carroll. Keolani is a Hawaiian word, or a Hawaiian name. And I spent 3 years in, no I didn't. I spent 1 year in Hawaii at Punahou, and then my parents were there for 2 more years while I started out at Annapolis. Okay, is George awake? Is he out of the house?
No, he's next door.
Is he asleep?
Yeah, he's all right now. Oh.
You sure? Okay, is this door shut?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I don't want to disturb my son-in-law. He's got an earache, and tell you what, this is the type of singing that if he had a bad earache, he'd probably take an ice pick and remove his ear if he heard how off key I'll be, no matter what song I sing. Okay, well, I think I saw do. Okay, I hate this scrolling. It confuses David too. But now I've got to scroll, unless somebody, well, now I'm getting an email. The only reason I'm delaying is to see if this stuff that's coming in is something that the chat room would like to hear. Oh, wait a minute. Somebody's listening that's not in the chat room. Thank you, Gonzalo Camacho, mi hermana. Excuse me, that was unintentional. Mi hermano. For people that don't speak Spanish, what I said was, thank you very much. Now, let me just go back. I know exactly who this guy is. Gonzalo Camacho. Okay. Now, the name Gonzalo indicates he's a male. The surname Camacho is also a male, but the person, it could be Senorita Camacho, in which case the O at the end of Camacho doesn't mean she's something else. But hang on, here comes the, I think he's got the, do you want to see it real quick? I'm hoping all these people are on the right side. Well, I'll tell you what, this is going to be interesting because I only recognize 3 names, including my own, so it's not like they've got the, in one of the names, rather than talk like that, let me just put it in. Caravan to Midnight. I think this is a victory for Abel Danger, personally. I could be wrong, I could be right, doesn't matter, we're going to find out. If anybody else hasn't put it there, I'm way to the bottom. Oh no, that's yesterday. Okay, let me just change over to today. What I'm interested is, I'm going to put the link I just got in from Mr. Camacho, Gonzalo, and I'm scrolling down to the bottom. Okay, I didn't see any music, so I'll just presume we're not going to be doing that. I'm posting the link now, and this link is for the conference down in Dallas over the weekend of probably 9, 10, and 11, or 10, 11, and 12. And it's a very nice conference, and the conference hotel is extremely nice. And if anybody ends up going to Dallas for this particular conference, don't even think about renting a car, because I think the hotel van picks you up, and 10 minutes later you're at the hotel, and you wouldn't have much use for a car because you'll be in there. The events start fairly early in the morning, like perhaps 9 o'clock or maybe 8 o'clock, I don't know. Then they go into the evening, and people are interested in sharing thoughts. So if somebody had put up the big red button, you don't see any reason to continue, do you, Denise? I don't.
Should we show him my day?
No. Thank you, but no, I don't. Vanishing Point just posted November 9 to 11, 2018. Yep. Well, that's interesting. I've enjoyed the show. I enjoy all the shows. After this sinks in, and after Denise gets her visa, if she gets it, or gets it denied if they want to go that route, which I don't recommend for them, maybe a few people will show up in Plum City the third weekend in July. The Plum City Festival, which we have nothing to do with. It runs Friday, Saturday, and Sunday the third weekend in July. And what the restaurant that used to be called Dean's is reopening. The building has been severely updated. People like Jack Mack or Bucky Badger won't recognize it. But anyway, thank you all for sharing your time with us. And if somebody, there's the big red button, thank you. That was David, the Telford Russian. Thank you very much. Go Banks says, give me Skype call. Okay, now, who's that to, Go Bank? Do you want David to... Anyway, whoever you want to... wait a minute. Let's see what this song is that Liverish P put up. T-Rex singing We Love to Boogie. I like to boogie, I like the nightlife on the disco highway. Anyway, I'm trying to be somewhat quiet because the vanishing point, Colonel Anthony Schaefer, good guy or bad guy in your viewpoint, from your experience? Thank you. Well, Jets Girl, you don't have to thank me. Anybody's welcome to the chat room. Somebody from Abel Danger that's not listening to the show just sent me something. It's Bucky Badger, and he's very happy to see that Denise has her interview scheduled. I'll be a lot more conversant, or I'll be a lot more open about my thoughts once that thing's approved or denied. I want to take a look at something else that just came in and see if... Oh, interesting. A nurse has been charged in the death of former Trump advisor McMaster's father. So I guess they're killing them in the U.S. just like they're killing them over here. A little boy died 2 or 3 weeks ago. His name was Alfie. And they had to kill him because if he lived another 3 or 4 days, the nation of England, through the National Health Service, would have been liable for a big claim. Speaking of big claims, there's somebody else that's liable for a big claim for separation of a man and his wife for about... I'm not really good at math like David, but I think it's about 360 plus 1 day, 550 days. In fact, anybody got a calculator? 550 days times 4.3 million a day. It would be enough to provide, say, chips and soft drinks, mineral water, lime slices, if we ever had a get-together. Get-togethers are fun. Okay, let's see, where was I? I got the big red button, and I'm waiting for the 3, 2, 1. Oops, got the wrong yesterday's campfire. Let's get here. Yeah, somebody said in its vanishing point, I'd like to meet Anthony Schaefer, and I asked about him. And Jets Girl, yeah, you're welcome. Everybody's welcome in our chat room. The problem is only about 100 fit. So even though I'm frequently late, if people want to get in the chat room, they shouldn't be late. Let's see what else we have. Don't think they allow anymore. Don't think they allow that anymore in the People Republic and New Jersey bugs. Campfires on the beach. Well, I'm going to make a phone call here to the person that hopes to buy the ranch in Texas, and there's generally good news. When I hear news, it's generally good. There's the Able Danger button. Never bonfires. So sad, David. Our very happy mammies skinny dipping after sunset. I would have thought it would be more fun for the guys if the skinny dipping was before sunset. Oh, not if it was cold. Yeah, what's it all about, Alfie? Is it just for the moment we love? Field, I saw a YouTube with Schaefer and others a few years back. I just like what he said, and he's easy on the eye. Okay. And nobody's given me the 1, 2, 3, 3, 2, 1, whatever the protocol is, so I'm going to take things into my own hands if we don't get it soon. Yeah, vaccine damaged, and you're right. Who just said that? Yes, Agent Bugs did. I understand that also. Okay, I'm going to do something really decisive. I'm going to give myself the 3-2-1 protocol. Although I take it as